It's very big. Hello pals, and welcome to yet another vlog. Who is she? But I've got a bit of a bookish week ahead. This evening I'm going to the library in Waterford to listen to an interview with Clare Keegan of Small Things Like These and Foster fame. Small Things Like These is out in the cinema very soon. I'm very excited. Next Thursday, which is Halloween, we're going to another library to see Colm Tóibín in conversation with Elaine Feeney. And I just figured, sure, look, won't I bring you along and we'll see what happens. It's going to be a grand old time, I hope. I am currently reading a book. It's very big. What is that book? It is Our Share of Night by Mariana Esquives. I'd like to hold it up, but it's hardback and it's over 700 pages and it's quite difficult to keep it there. So you've seen it now, I'm going to put it down. What is this book about? I'm about 500 pages in. So you'd think I would be a great authority on telling you what this book is about. But it's the kind of book that you read and you get very little information. You get like tidbits of information as you go, and everything feels a little bit foggy the whole way through. The basic premise of the book is we initially are following a man and his 6-year-old son. So the man's name is Juan. He's very sick. He's had heart problems his whole life, has had many surgeries, and he has a son, Juan. And Juan is 6 in the beginning of the book, and their wife/mother has only recently passed away in an accident. And in the beginning of the book, they're both leaving their home, and it's quite difficult to tell whether they're fleeing something, whether they're running away from something, running towards something, if they're just going on a nice little trip. But it all feels very vague and it all feels a little bit sort of uneasy in a way. We learn as we go through the book that they are involved in an organisation that feels very occult, that is very much into this idea of this entity called the darkness. And there are these ceremonies, and the father, Juan, is sort of like the main person for whom the responsibility of these ceremonies lies upon, and he's quite sick. They take a lot out of him. It seems very dangerous. It seems very uneasy. We're set initially in Buenos Aires, and we move through time and we move through place. So we're mostly from Juan and Gasper's perspective, but as we move through the book, time does jump backwards a little bit. We get the perspective of another person, and it's all very eerie. It's at times very gruesome. The father-son relationship feels unethical at many points, I'm going to say. There are themes in this that I wasn't expecting. Some things are quite upsetting, so check the trigger warnings if you fancy reading it. I can't explain this in a tiny little snippet. This book is an experience in and of itself. I am really enjoying it in as much as you can enjoy something that's really repelling you, that you can't really understand, that you feel very much on the outside of, but so far so good. As for this morning, I'm going to meet my friend for breakfast. Haven't seen her in quite some time, so that should be lovely. I'm just looking at the screen of the camera here and just realised that my t-shirt matches my curtains. I'm going to turn into something green eventually. I had a lovely morning. We went for breakfast. I got a vegan omelette. It was beautiful. It was really nice to see my friend as well. We've been friends since we were 12 and I am 35 now, and so is she. So we've been friends for 23 years, and it was just so nice to catch up. And we went to a nearby park for a walk afterwards, and it's normally so busy on the weekends, and this is actually like a bank holiday weekend, but it wasn't busy. It was really quiet and it was so beautiful. We're like literally at that point now where the leaves have turned, and like next week there'll be no leaves left on the trees, so it's just like that lovely little time where everything is so bright red and bright orange. And you know, sometimes you kind of look at things on Instagram or social media and you can tell like that they're filtered or enhanced in some way. But I was just looking at them and I'm like, this is actually real. Like that tree looks that red. And we went and we sat by a lake for a little while and watched the ducks. And I have become so soft as an adult. I was like sitting there looking at these little ducks and just really enjoying watching them doing their thing and thinking like, it's so magic that I get to exist in a world that ducks exist in, or that dogs exist in, or any animal. It's fascinating, and we're so blessed in so many ways, and I think we should be doing a lot more to take care of all that, to be more climate aware. But I won't get into that because, you know, we can go down a rabbit hole.
No worries. Hop into something comfy though. Let's get started. Jam today. That's great too. Just give yourself a little snack. Just keep it up. More than after that session. Okay. So you could
I've been trying to get back into poetry again, and so I've been reading Devotions by Mary Oliver. And every day after I practice yoga, I try to read at least one poem from this collection. And today's poem is called Praying, and it goes like this. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention, then patch a few words together and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak.
I always think that truth is in the middle. People who know nothing about fiction writing and talk about, oh, it's only a fiction, know absolutely nothing about fiction, because fiction is always hunting for the truth. And the truth is not in the extremity, it's not in the drama, it's always in the middle of the situation. And it's always within the realm of plausibility. Never, you can't go outside of it, and you can't exaggerate and keep your reader, it's not possible. So I'm just really interested in being in that place where you're hunting the truth and finding out what people are like under pressure. And that will say something about the relationship they're in, their character, their home, or their society, in this case the town they live in also, and the pressures they're under are really interesting to me. It's also lovely to imagine what it's like to be somebody else, which to me is the civilizing part of literature. You know, imagine how you would be as somebody going around in the world if you'd never imagined anything from another person's point of view. And I do think that when we fail, it's usually because our imagination has in one or another way, and another way, failed us.
Alright friends, it's a lovely dark rainy Sunday and the clocks went back last night, so it's 3:30 at the moment, and it's gonna be dark, properly dark, in the next 2 hours. And I know a lot of people really hate that, but I love the dark evenings. I just feel really cocooned and really held and really safe when it's dark out. Obviously when I'm home, not when I'm out walking alone or anything. We went to see Clare Keegan last night in an event in the library, and there's something very, very interesting about Clare Keegan. I feel like she's a very no-nonsense woman, and she talked about how in her books, because we all know when we read her books that there is no nonsense in them, there's nothing superfluous. Every word feels very, very well chosen and very deliberate, and she very much spoke about that and how the things that are in her book are always there intentionally, that nothing is by accident. She's really funny as well, in a really kind of dry way, and she really gave such great answers to some questions asked by some young people, which was lovely. She works as a lecturer as well, or she definitely used to. I believe she still does, maybe. I couldn't imagine being in her classroom. I feel like I would be really intimidated, because she is in a way very much like there you go now. She has no time for drama or no time for things that don't matter. And I really respect that. One thing that I really took away from it is that she really values kindness. And I really loved hearing her say that, because I know we can all be very like, oh, be kind and you never know who's fighting a hard battle and yada yada. And absolutely, I believe in that. Like, and beyond like the cheesiness, I believe in that. That's a really important way to live, and kindness to ourselves and to each other, to animals, to other living creatures, to our environment and to our planet. And I just really loved that. And also, she donated her fee to the Society for Protection of Cruelty to Animals, and she didn't announce that, the library did. So I also really appreciated that. I love an animal lover. If you get the opportunity to ever go see Clare Keegan speak, do, or listen to her speak, if you ever hear her on podcasts or if there are any interviews on YouTube or anything like that, I feel like she's such an inspiring woman in such an ordinary way. How do I explain that? Like, if you've read her books, none of her books are, as she says herself, they're not fancy. They're about normal, everyday things. And she says that if a writer writes something in a way, like if you're standing in the departures queue in the airport and nothing's happening and you're running late, but everything's still really quite boring, she said if you write that in a certain way, if you write that with a sense of importance about that, if you care about that, then the reader will join you. Good morning. I think I will never make a proper vlogger because I just forget or don't bother to take out my camera. So it's Tuesday morning and I have been up for quite a few hours now. It's 8 a.m. I just can't stay asleep, and I'm just gonna have to accept that that is something that is happening again right now, and know that it will pass too. I'm not going to die without having a full night's sleep. I have proven that time and time again. It's not that important. It's important, but I can still function and things will cycle back around. Anyway, last night I finished reading Our Share of Night by Mariana Esquives. I was reading that book for, it felt like ages, but it was only about 11 days, but I feel like I spent a really long time with those characters. And when I finished it, usually when I'm reading a book, I have this idea of how I'm going to rate it, even before I finish it. But with this book, my rating has fluctuated so much as I've been reading. And when I finished it, I was like, I don't know if this is the best book that I've read all year, or if I hated it, or maybe it's both, but I did really love it as well. I don't know. I feel really conflicted about it because there are so many things in this book that are really dark and really harrowing. For example, there are a lot of really kind of graphic descriptions of child abuse, a lot of descriptions of abuse in general. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of sort of cruelty, and there's a lot of darkness, and that was difficult. But then in other ways, that's what made this book feel really special. Our main character winds up being Gasper. We follow him as he grows up into his early, if not to mid-20s. He has basically been hidden from his family by his dad, but his dad never really explains this and never really explains why. So Gasper isn't aware of this organization who sort of uses his dad as a medium to interact with the darkness. They're trying to obtain immortality, and that's what this is all about. But the ways that they go about this are especially cruel. They're using people as things to be discarded rather than as actual people. That was quite hard in a lot of ways to read, but also there are some really lovely examples of friendships and just really wholesome relationships. I felt like reading the whole way through this book, I didn't really know what was going on, and that wasn't a defect on my part. That was the way that the book was written. It only gives you little tidbits of information as you go on, and before I started reading last night, I had only about 100 pages left to read, and I was like, I don't know if or how Mariana Escoves is going to be able to wrap all of this up, and I'm not going to tell you whether or not she does. But what I will say is that there are so many examples in this book of things that seem irrelevant, of little sort of tangents in the stories that seem irrelevant, of characters that seem irrelevant, of things that happen that might seem just like, why is this here? But there's a reason for a lot of it, if not all of it. And honestly, I thought in the end that what Mariana Escoves did with this book was quite masterful. But I always say personally that 5 stars is a feeling, and I don't think that this book is 5 stars for me. But that said, I'm going to leave it sit for a while because there's so much to think about in here. It's set over the background of the Dirty War, and this is something that I had never encountered before. My history knowledge is not the best, but particularly my knowledge of history in other countries is non-existent. I did not know anything about this, and I've been thinking about how this book is written as a horror book. It's in the horror genre, it's a literary horror book, and I wonder if you could write about this history in any way other than within the context of horror, because, you know, a small little Google search, what I learned was absolutely harrowing. I love this about fiction, its ability to allow me to escape from the real world, but also to bring me much deeper into the real world and to teach me about things that I have never encountered before and probably wouldn't encounter in any other way. There are so many layers to this book, and I'm just going to have a think about it because it was something else. I have never read anything like it before. I think a lot of people are not going to enjoy this book at all. They're going to find it really slow, really awful in many ways, and yes, it is those things, but it's done in such a way that's just magnificent, to be honest.
Logical. His mind is brilliant. You can see the way he's working out the logic, not only of things in mathematics, but actually everything everyone says, he examines to see if it could possibly be true. So he has a sort of a mind you can really watch, and it's consistent. It's brilliantly done.
October has come and gone, so it's November 1st today, and I started reading Essays in Love by Alain de Botton. I think it's called On Love in other regions. But anyway, I'm not that far into it, but I did come across a quote that so far I really liked on page 14. Let me read it for you. Every fall into love involves the triumph of hope over self-knowledge. We fall in love hoping we won't find in another what we know is in ourselves, all the cowardice, weakness, laziness, dishonesty, compromise, and stupidity. We throw a cordon of love around the chosen one and decide that everything within it will somehow be free of our faults. We locate inside another a perfection that eludes us within ourselves, and through our union with the beloved, hope to maintain, against the evidence of all self-knowledge, a precarious faith in our species. As I was sitting here and filming this clip, a little robin flew over and sat beside me. But of course, he was on the other side where you can't see him. I looked at him in shock, and he looked back at me, I think a bit surprised to actually see me sitting there, and he flew away very quickly. That's it for me, pals. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more from me. Take care, and I'll chat to you soon. Oh, and if you're wondering, I gave 4 stars to Our Share of Night in the end. Bye bye.